The Amos Fortune Forum is now in session. My name is Brad Smith, and I am really glad to welcome all of you to the 77th season of the forum. We have been covering a lot of different ground over the years. This summer is no exception. We have 7 presentations throughout the summer. We started with baseball history. We're going to end on voting rights and cover a lot of ground in between. But tonight is particularly important because we will be talking about Amos Fortune and some of his colleagues and other African Americans who helped shape the fabric of New Hampshire history. In a moment, I'll bring Owen Houghton up to introduce our speaker. First, I have just a few housekeeping items, but primarily some thank yous. First of all, to Margie Clark-Cavan, who is on the Amos Fortune Forum Committee and has graciously hosted our speaker tonight, and also sponsored these beautiful flowers that you see in front of us that come from Call's Gardens down in Jaffrey. So thank you very much, Margie. I also want to thank Jill Slicker and Kathy Thigpen for organizing the reception afterwards. Everyone is invited to join us directly across the way at the Parish Hall right afterwards. Just follow the lights. It'll probably be dark by then. And you'll have a chance to have some cold refreshments, meet with our speaker, and socialize for a little while afterwards. So we invite all of you to attend. I also want to thank all of our individual and corporate sponsors and donors who have been extremely generous, not only this year, but throughout the years. The forum remains free and open to all, and we intend to keep it that way. So we really appreciate all of your generosity. If you haven't had an opportunity to donate and you are so moved, you can drop something in our begging bowls on the way out. You can go to our website, amosfortune.org, and we make it extremely easy for you to donate there, and anything is appreciated. We are recording tonight's session. So if you have any family or friends who either couldn't make it or are out of region, within 24 hours or so, we should have it posted on YouTube, and they can watch it at their leisure. Again, I would encourage you to go to our website if you'd like to learn anything more about tonight's speaker or our other speakers this season. We have listed every speaker since 1946. And it's a really interesting and I think impressive list that continues to impress. So feel free to spend a little time on the website there. With that, I will move away and invite Owen Houghton to make some introductions.
Thank you, Brad. The Amos Fortune Forum honors its namesake this evening, and I'm privileged to be part of this presentation from the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire. As past president of the Jaffrey Historical Society, I became a partner with the Jaffrey Public Library, which had a long history of welcoming school groups and families who had learned of Amos Fortune through the book Amos Fortune, Free Man by Elizabeth Yates. That book, circulated around the world, became a gold medal winner of the Newbery Medal for the most distinguished contribution to American literature for children. The library connection downtown, often the starting point for tours of the old burying ground with gravestones of Amos and his wife Violet, contains some records of his tools and his tanning business. We have a CD of Radio Free Europe recording the life of Amos, and a photo of the home he built on his farm on Amos Fortune Road. Over time, I came to understand the deep pride felt by many local folks for the truly remarkable story of this enslaved man who was freed at age 60, accepted into full citizenship, and became a symbol of the numerous patriots in New Hampshire. Learning of the mission of the Black Heritage Trail, I was appointed by the Historical Society to develop and cite an appropriate marker for our famous citizen. Peter Lambert, current president of the Jaffrey Historical Society, deserves recognition for his dedication to the project, starting with a publication entitled Amos Fortune, The Man and His Legacy, written in 2000 to research and present more facts than was available to Elizabeth Yates. That project, funded by the Amos Fortune Forum, was invaluable in meeting the 100-word requirement for the Black Heritage Trail marker. For over 2 years, the precise vetting process required by the folks in Portsmouth led to an unveiling ceremony in August 2023 at the site of the old burying ground. The marker faces Mount Monadnock and points across to the graves. A rock donated from the Amos farm by Doug Cutter has a profile which remarkably mirrors the mountain, thanks to the good eye of John Caulfield and his understanding of the significance of the remarkable story of Amos Fortune, Jaffrey's prominent entrepreneur and first benefactor. My gratitude to our speaker for this opportunity to showcase the process many other communities right now are following to honor their distinguished Black citizens. It's been such a pleasure to get to know Nora, our speaker, and her colleagues throughout our journey to honor Amos. And now let us meet Nora Lewis, who Nora is a first-generation Cuban American. She's currently the Development Associate of the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire. She comes to the trail with a long history of customer service, sales, and civic engagement. She enjoys working with and mentoring youth, and for 13 years, she was a troop leader for the Hollis Girl Scouts and leader of the Silver Stirrups 4-H Club for Horses. Nora has served as the president of the Hollis Women's Club, president of the Colonial Garden Club of Hollis, and more recently, she has the privilege of being a lead floral designer for the Art Bloom at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Big welcome to Nora Lewis.
Thank you, Owen. Okay, before I start my presentation this evening, I just want to take a moment to thank the Amos Fortune Committee for having me here to present this evening. And also a special thank you to Margie and her husband Jeff for hosting me and my guests for dinner. It was wonderful, and it was the perfect way to start the evening. Yes. The opening song, Lift Every Voice and Sing, truly captures the hope people of African descent have had for their country. A hope to achieve liberty and justice for all. In spite of the brutal history of enslavement, racism, and systemic barriers to full citizenship, people of African American descent have taken definitive steps toward freedom and to be true to their native land. From Crispus Attucks, the first man to die in the 1770 Boston Massacre, in what some historians have called the beginning of the Revolutionary War, to the 5,000 African American soldiers and sailors, free and enslaved, who served in that war. To the 1,007 Black soldiers who served in the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first regiment of African Americans from the North to serve during the Civil War. Black men have served a country that even today finds it difficult to fully acknowledge their dignity and equality. In my talk today, I'll recount the stony road several Black New Hampshire citizens traveled to realize their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as envisioned for all Americans in the Declaration of Independence. I will share some stories of New Hampshire's early Black residents, including stories of this town's son, Amos Fortune. These stories will show how they worked to become exemplary citizens and authentic patriots by giving back to their communities. Becoming good neighbors, strong leaders, and creative entrepreneurs, exemplary examples of civic duty, philanthropy, and love for country. Many enslaved people in colonial Portsmouth worked in the homes, wharfs, and also lands of influential political figures. Some, like Prince Whipple, fought in wars in an act that General George S. Patton, Jr. noted as the highest obligation and privilege of citizenship, bearing arms for one's country. Prince Whipple was bought from slave traders by William Whipple of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. 3 years after Thomas Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident and that all men are created equal." The irony is not lost on Prince and the other signers of the 1779 Petition for Freedom. These enslaved Africans saw the hypocrisy of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, who proclaimed liberty and equality as fundamental principles while maintaining the institution of slavery. Composing their own freedom petition was a bold act of courage for these 20 enslaved Africans who displayed immense courage during a time of oppression. They asked the New Hampshire legislature to recognize their humanity and to restore their freedom so that the name of the slave may no longer be heard in a land of gloriously contending for the sweets of freedom. Unfortunately, the petition was tabled after being submitted by the General Assembly. It was later published by law in a newspaper, but it came with a disclaimer that it was for readers' amusement. Okay. This is the work that we're engaged in at the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire. We are a statewide organization, and we're headquartered at 222 Court Street in historic downtown Portsmouth, a town that has the largest slave trading post in New Hampshire. I'm sorry, trading port, I said post. The mission of the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire promotes awareness and appreciation of African American history and life in order to build more inclusive communities today. And our vision is to celebrate a people's history of resilience, versatility, and courage. Portsmouth is home to the oldest known burying ground in the region. The burying ground on Chestnut and Court Street confirms a story that complicates our understanding of the North. Portsmouth flourished as a shipbuilding city and grew wealthy from the trading of enslaving Africans. In 2000, during a routine road repair, 13 coffins were unearthed. Based on the density of the burials and the size of the area, it is approximated that over 200 souls are buried in that area. On the left, you can see the outline of the coffins, and you can note that some of them were even left in the sidewalk. The upper right shows the work that is being done, and on the lower right, you can see pictures of broken clay pipes, which indicates that this was not the first time that the burying ground was disturbed. Sometime in the 1800s, and it was not acknowledged. So although the African burying ground was built over and erased from sight in the early 1800s, it was returned to sacred space in 2015 with this memorial park. The memorial park was created by Jerome Meadows, an artist and a sculptor, and it now serves as the starting point for a conversation on race and slavery. And it serves as a visible remembrance of our history. Although the names of the men, women, and children that were buried there have been erased and are unknown, they contributed to the fabric that is New Hampshire today. The piece with the marble and the bronze statues is called the Enterpiece by Meadows, and it signifies the woman who is facing west, portrays Mother Africa. On the other side, the man faces east, pointed towards Africa, and portrays the first man to be enslaved in Portsmouth. There were men like Vance Coit of Newport, New Hampshire. He welcomed Revolutionary War veteran Salem Colby and other Black families who joined him in settling at the summit of the mountain that bears his name. Revolutionary War veteran Derek Oxford of Plainville, New Hampshire. Or Sampson Moore Battis of Canterbury, who achieved the rank of major when he was given command of a battalion by Governor Gilman in 1800. This probably makes him the first African American to be put in charge of white troops and to be officially awarded this military title. Or the many others listed in Glenn Noble's book, Strong and Brave Fellows. There are so many more, including veterans Ichabod Twilight and William Bradish and cousins John and James Haskell, whose stories represent a small part of Warner's Black history. The journey from being enslaved to becoming a patriot is a powerful narrative of resilience and of courage. Their stories are not just about the physical journey from bondage to freedom, but also from the mental and emotional evolution that transforms individuals into active and loyal citizens of a country that once denied them their basic human rights. So the quest for freedom is a key part of the journey from being enslaved to becoming a patriot. The journey includes acts of resistance, self-emancipation, joining revolts, and other forms of subtle defiance. Enslaved from birth to Martha Washington, Ona Marie Judge's story connects directly to New Hampshire and the fundamental pursuit of individual freedom. When George Washington was elected president, 15-year-old Ona Judge traveled with 7 other enslaved people to the executive residence in Philadelphia. She was among the enslaved people where Washington secretly rotated them out of the city every 6 months. They did so to evade the 1780 Pennsylvania Emancipation Law. But on May 21st, 1796, at the age of 22, she slipped out of the presidential mansion in Philadelphia during one of these rotations. She had learned that Martha was about to give her as a gift. She escaped with the help from Philadelphia Free Black community members and boarded a boat called the Nancy to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So much of what we know about Judge's life compared to the other people enslaved by the Washingtons is a result of 2 newspaper interviews that she gave in 1845 and 1847. When she was asked if she was sorry that she had left the luxury of the presidential mansion to live in poverty, Ona replied, "No, I am free and have, I trust, been made a child of God by the means." Her account of the dramatic quest for freedom represents a rare moment when the voice of a person enslaved at Mount Vernon appears in the historical record. She ended up living a long life in Greenland, where she was married and had 3 children. Pictured at the site, you can see her grave, which the trail is actually working to preserve. And to the right, we have Ona Judge in costume. This is what we call our living histories. So if you take a tour with us, we have Jack Staines, Ona Judge, and Prince Whipple in costume that will talk to you about their adventures throughout their life. Regaining freedom was an essential milestone that allowed good citizenship and patriotism to flourish. No story more embodies the principles than that of Jaffrey's own son, Amos Fortune. Fortune was born around 1710 in Africa. He was captured and stolen from his homeland and sold into slavery in Massachusetts. He purchased his freedom at the age of 60, and at 71, he left Massachusetts and moved to Jaffrey with his second wife to start a tanning business. It should also be noted that he also bought the freedom of his first wife before her passing. Documents now archived in the Jaffrey Public Library testify to his literacy, community position, and financial success. Fortune's tannery prospered, and he employed at least 2 apprentices and served clients in nearby towns and Massachusetts. He was a full member of First Church, leading founder in establishing the town's first library, and donated funds for a school. Years later, the library commissioned him to rebind a collection of books. In 1789, Fortune purchased 25 acres on Tyler Brook. The house and barn he built still stand in the original location, and the road of the house where it stands is called Amos Fortune Road, which I'm sure many of you here from Jaffrey are aware of. Upon his death in 1801, he bequeathed $233 to the town of Jaffrey for educational programs, and $100 to purchase a handsome gift to the church, making him the town's first benefactor. Funds that were left from his estate still supports the Amos Fortune Forum lecture series today. While Amos Fortune was establishing himself as a valued member of Jaffrey's community, George Blanchard was doing the same thing in Milford, New Hampshire. George Blanchard moved to Milford in 1804 when he bought 72 acres of land in what is known as the Mile Slip area of town. An entrepreneurial man, Blanchard was a Revolutionary War veteran, a veterinarian, and the owner of a mill that made barrels. He also operated a boarding house for traveling African Americans and operated a blacksmith shop in the center of Milford, the heart of the city. Blanchard's family plot, as you can see, is the only visible testimony to his existence. However, you would have to know the town's history to know that George Blanchard was a man of color. New Hampshire's history has shown how easy it is for African Americans to disappear from town records and the collective memory of a community. George Blanchard's story is recorded in Ramsdell's 1901 History of Milford, where he was described as a colored man and a veterinary surgeon who moved to Milford in 1804. Curiously, he disappears from the town records 78 years later, when Winifred Wright publishes her own book on Milford's history. She wrote, "There were no veterinarians recorded in Milford before 1899. Well, George Blanchard died in 1824, so how could that be?" Disregarding town records that showed the demand for Blanchard's services as a vet being in great demand across the state into Massachusetts and Connecticut. George's son Timothy was also a veterinary surgeon. At least 3 of George Blanchard's children attended public school in Milford, and that was a rare occurrence for blacks at that time. So Timothy and his 2 younger sisters attended the schools, and as an adult, Timothy donated land to the town to construct a schoolhouse. The schoolhouse is recorded as being the P.F. Shed School, named after the later owners of Blanchard's land. So we have a historic marker where we honor individuals and sometimes places, and this particular one is of Wentworth Cheswell. Wentworth was a teacher, a coroner, a scrivener, an assessor, an auditor, a moderator, a selectman, and a justice of the peace. He was a man of many firsts. He was a man of many firsts, and he was also reported to have been the first archaeologist in New Hampshire. In 1901, Cheswell and several towns organized the first library in Newmarket. So we do these markers, just as we did here in Jaffrey, and the ones that are upcoming, we have the one to the Manchester Cotton Mills in Manchester. We also have one in Dover that honors Dinah Waldron and her kids, Plato and Chloe. In Dunbarton, we're going to honor Scipio Page. Altruism and compassion are also essential qualities that good citizens embody. Empathy and compassion towards others, particularly those in need, were qualities that James Dew had. James Dew must have been a remarkable person with a fascinating story, yet we hardly know anything about him. We don't have a clue where he came from, but we know that he was listed as a free person of color because he was listed on the censuses. He settled in Hancock in 1779 before Hancock was an incorporated town. He was a man of means with 42 land transactions in which he bought and sold land, and when those are recorded in his name. At his will, he leaves money for the care of his Jack, a Revolutionary War veteran. This is James Dew's home just before it was demolished in the 1990s by the landowner, the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests. This was for the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire, the first marker that now sits on its foundation. The pursuit of freedom can inspire a passion for justice and equality, turning the formerly enslaved into strong advocates for human rights. Advocacy and activism, Nancy Gardner's Prince's life embodies those qualities. Prince was an African-American woman known for her memoir and travel experiences. We believe she was born in Newburyport and later became a significant figure in the abolitionist movement. However, specific details about her time in Henniker are limited. She married Nora Prince in 1824 and lived in Henniker a time before accompanying her husband to St. Petersburg to serve the Tsar. At the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire, we are on the brink of groundbreaking change. In a way, we share our stories. Our innovative approach will bring dynamic experiences that transcend traditional learning and revolutionize how our younger generations engage in Black history. This year, our founding organization turns 30. On August 29th, we'll celebrate our one woman's journey and a dream that began with her search to find Black history in her hometown. This search led her creating a visible trail in Portsmouth that tells a more diverse New Hampshire history. Her dream has grown into a vision of engaging 400,000 New Hampshire residents, or a third of our population, for sustainable change toward a more just and inclusive society that we can all thrive in. We've started to research on how to make each of our markers part of an outdoor virtual museum that will provide an immersive and interactive experience. It will enable users to learn about Black history in New Hampshire, and each marker will be connected to more information that is not currently listed on the marker, or as I would say, the physical marker itself. Our innovative approach creates exciting experiences that go beyond traditional learning and change how young people learn about Black history. Anyone with a cell phone can visit any of our markers across the state. Using their phone, they can view documents related to the stories on the marker, or even get a visual experience of that time period. So at the trail, we offer quite a number of rich programs. We begin with winter tea talks that begin in February. We offer summer guided tours. And as I had mentioned previously, you can also take one of our tours, one of our living history tours. And we have a statewide Frederick Douglass reading, which Peterborough and Jaffrey participated in June. It was wonderful. We offer a variety of Juneteenth celebrations. And in the fall, we have our annual New England Conference, Black Conference. So our Black New England Conference is going to be held this year in New Hampshire. We were at Northeastern last year, Massachusetts. This year it's going to be held at Southern New Hampshire University. and the title of it is Living Out Loud, the Intersectionality of Race, Gender, and Sexual Orientation. And we actually already have on our website pre-registration available. This is one of our very popular programs. We do offer it virtually and in person, and it usually sells out. So the work at the trail brings New Hampshire's more inclusive history out of the shadows. Our work is an opportunity to learn about history, celebrate Black life, joy, and culture. By fostering conversations about race, diversity, and inclusion, and sharing these corrective narratives, we believe it's possible to decrease barriers of misunderstanding, break stereotypes, and decrease people's racial anxiety. These are not just stories about and for African Americans. Helping to know these stories in our shared history helps us to understand each other much better. Without a shared history, a society loses its memory of core values and past decisions, resulting in confusion and present issues. Without history, we cannot undertake any sensible inquiry into society's political, social, or moral issues. This is power in our history. This is American history. Thank you. So at this time, we can take about 10 to 15 minutes worth of questions. And I have with me tonight our grant writer and historian, Barbara Ward, who's here in the audience. And if you have any questions that are particularly a little bit more complicated than I can answer, I am not a historian. She's here to give you that information. And we actually, at our organization, value her greatly because she's the only one that really can provide context to things that I can't remember from high school, but she can. So I will call on anyone who has a question at this point. And also just want to mention that afterwards there is a reception, so if people want to continue the conversation, we're happy to speak to you then as well. And I see this lady in the front. Right, yes. So the question is what our process is to find these historic figures, and what is the process for us to do a marker to honor them. So sometimes we have historians that do research. We have people who come to us at times, they've uncovered something about a particular person from their town. Just like in Jaffrey, it was brought, I believe, through the library? Yes? Okay. So through research, people who are interested in the history, and some of it is already there, but some of it does require some digging into, because we do want to validate the information that we're going to be listed on those markers. In terms of how we go about the process for the markers, so it's a partnership between the trail and the specific town who wants to erect a marker. So that, when I say partnership, it has to do with the funding of how it's paid, and also because every town is very different, the celebration that accompanies it can range from having, let's see, in Warner, we honored 3 individuals who served in different wars, and so they decided to have muskets fired off. Here in Jaffrey, which I find to have been one of the more memorable unveilings, we had music. I love the whole story about the boulder, where it came from Amos Fortune's property, the orientation of the stone facing Mount Monadnock and also facing the gravesite. So that, to me, is very interesting. And we had a nice time, didn't we, Amos? So that's one way. So if anyone has any information, usually, sometimes they contact our office and we get inquiries and then we follow up. The process is not that quick though. So like I said, we do take time to research, make sure things are valid, and then once everything is okay, we do get the text that we can put on the marker, and then we have an unveiling and a celebration of sorts for that particular town. And yes, ma'am.
I find the story of Ona Judge so moving. The slave Martha Washington. She must have had some care taken of her as Martha Washington's slave, and she gave up that relative privilege.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about what your process is as to finding these heroic African Americans, and then in follow-up, how have you chosen the sites for the class?
Yes. Yes. Right. Yeah, she actually, the Washingtons sent for her to be returned on numerous occasions. So this was not get on the boat and I'm done deal at all. So many attempts were made. They sent one of the Washingtons, I believe it was a cousin or somebody related to the Washingtons, to bring her back. She did have help. She did work in the state, in Portsmouth. And when you think about it, you know, what is the price to pay for your freedom? You know, to think that somebody would actually think that she would prefer to live in that luxurious environment, well, you know, that doesn't cut it. You know, you want freedom, and who doesn't want their freedom? So she couldn't be bought, and she left. But come to one of our living history tours, because you'll get a lot more information if you can. Yeah, it's very informative. Yes, sir. Yes, correct. The gentleman has made a comment about Ona Judge's story. Never Caught is the book. We sell it. You can buy it, I'm sure, online anywhere. And it's a good detailed account of her travels, escaping, eventually marrying. And I should also note that I did mention the site that we're trying to preserve. So hopefully at some point that will be done. It crosses over a snowmobiling trail. So this is how it's being destroyed, and we really need to make some effort in trying to restore it.
What happened with Prince Whipple and some of the other signers? Are there stories known?
So the question was, what happened to Prince Whipple and the other 19 signers of the Emancipation Law? Maybe you can answer that, Barbara. Actually, Barbara, do you want to come up so that you can be heard a little bit
I would
better?
just ask
Putting her on the
that
spot.
if you do want to nominate someone, you'll find that our website actually doesn't have the application form. You need to call the trail and they'll send you the information.
And yes, ma'am.
I find the story of Ona Judge so moving. The slave Martha Washington. She must have had some care taken of her as Martha Washington's slave, and she gave up that relative privilege.
Prince Whipple. You can't take it off. Okay. Prince Whipple continued actually to work for the Whipple household in part, but then he also became what he was referred to as in his obituary as the Caleb Quotem of Portsmouth. That's a reference to popular literature at the time, but essentially we think that he was a caterer, and he arranged parties and assemblies. So in our society, he would have been essentially a very high-end caterer. The comment was that no party of any consequence could be carried off in Portsmouth without the help of Prince Whipple. His wife is very famous too because she became the first teacher of the Ladies' African Charitable School, which they conducted in their home. And her daughter also taught in the school in subsequent years after she died. Prince Whipple died quite early, so we don't know as much about him as we do about his wife, in fact, in his later years, except from her obituary, which concentrates on his life, which is very interesting. The other signers of the petition, some we don't know too much about at all. One of the things that's an interesting sidelight on this, and Valerie Cunningham, who you all know is the founder of the Black Heritage Trail in Portsmouth and one of the authors of the book Black Portsmouth. She said that in doing her research on all of the signers, she was struck by the fact that none of them seemed to have suffered any particular repercussions for having signed the petition, at least in some ways. In other ways, none of them were probably ever accorded the respect in the community that they deserved. Some were Revolutionary War veterans, like Prince Whipple, and some of the others. Some never experienced freedom during their lifetimes. So it was a real act of courage at a time where it was very difficult to sign a petition like this one, and at a time when the colonies were really looking for more people and needed to recruit more soldiers and sign that petition to serve in behalf of the revolutionary cause if it was but at this point they hoped that would turn the legislature in their favor, but unfortunately the legislature chose to table it. The whole issue was not brought up again until 2015, when at the time, just before the dedication of the African Burying Ground Memorial Park, the legislature was it officially unanimous? Eventually, officially unanimous, gave the signers of the petition all posthumously their freedom. But if anybody wants more details, I could bore you to death with lots of additional information.
Like I said, she knows her history. Are there any other questions? Oh, and then we'll have you, Owen.
Well, the issue about the abolition of slavery in New Hampshire is one that gets a lot of people ask about this. And there actually was an act in 1857, which some people say was our way of abolishing slavery without actually mentioning slavery. But actually, technically, officially and completely, it was only by the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. But there is that 1857 law as well that some people point to as the abolition. But effectively, there were not very many people enslaved. But you can see that for Ona Judge, living in the 1840s in Greenland, she wasn't entirely safe even here.
Okay, Owen has a question. She
Sign up for our
does.
newsletter.
Yeah, we have a weekly, I'm going to say nearly every week on Sunday it comes out, and it's full of information. We post our events that are coming up, so that's great. You can see what you can look forward to. She has information that just brings awareness to certain things that you may not have heard throughout the state. I actually have a quick story to say. There was actually a lady who, and I don't know how she did this, so there was a story in the newsletter, and in the article there was a tiny little map, tiny, and somehow she blew it up, and you know who I'm talking about. She blew it up, and she realized that the town was Holyoke, where her family's from, and then she started to dig a little bit deeper, realized just through a lot of reading, the connections, and as it turns out, she has a rich history of Portsmouth. She's actually, her daughter and her former husband's side is related to the Moffats of the Moffat Ladd House in Portsmouth. So it's just amazing how people see things and really can uncover the material if you really read it, and you can spend, it's a good reading. I used to read the newspaper, now I read the newsletter, so. Okay, Dan.
Tell us when slavery was abolished in New Hampshire and what was the process that led to that?
Area to go, but I wonder any thoughts you have on the question of what is owed by New Hampshire as some other states take seriously the question of reparations.
That's a very good question, and I'm honestly not sure that I can do it the justice to answer that, quite honestly. I have my personal feelings, and my personal feelings, I don't feel that I would ever see come to fruition in my lifetime. I also don't see it in my children's lifetime. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I think the work to be done is to be able to see past the divisiveness of people seeing color, seeing black, seeing white, seeing race. Until we can somehow get over that hurdle, we've got a lot of work to be done. And it's sessions like this and forums like this that we come out and try to inform the public, and we hope that you'll take the information you've learned and share it with others. And the more people get on board and realize that there are so many injustices that they're going on now, they'll continue to go on until we have people in numbers that just say enough is enough. Those reparations, they do need to happen, but I'm not really sure, Dan, exactly how it could be very equally, if I can say that word, given. I'm not sure, but thank you for your question on that. And I don't know if Barbara has any questions, but I have one or thoughts. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality that we're living with right now. But I do applaud you and all those who do stand there week after week, at that corner, raising awareness, because the awareness needs to be made, whether they like it or not.
Yes. And I just want to add, if you are interested in the whole issue of reparations, there is an organization that's very active in New Hampshire. Brenda and her husband, Wilfred Lett, are involved with NCOBRA, which is an organization proposing reparations.
And you shared some uplifting stories.
That was the last question that we can take, yes, for the evening. Okay, one last question then.
The slave system, exporting agricultural products, the slave trade itself, and our mills profited greatly from free labor in the South, cotton, etc. It's a divisive area to go, but I wonder any thoughts you have on the question of what is owed by New Hampshire as some other states take seriously questions of reparations.
Not in the Revolutionary War. They were not segregated, but by the time of the Civil War, they were. Yeah. The one place that we do hear people talking about is in the Navy. Blacks and whites served on the same ships together. And so if you're interested in that, and also in maritime work and the role of African Americans in that, the book Blackjacks by Jeff Bolster is a great place to read about that.
All right, thank you.
We can get that afterwards.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
no problem.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I want to thank Nora again. If raising awareness was our goal tonight, I think we succeeded. And as is our tradition at the Amos Fortune Forum, we want to say thank you by giving you a half gallon of maple syrup.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Well, I'm glad the tradition was not that I was going to be pulled off stage by the legendary Hook. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, that concludes things. Next week, we are honored to have Mark Beckwith with us, who will be talking about seeing beyond polarization. So I think it's a great way to pick.
And so that is another piece of it. There's an awful lot of white people and people other than black people who are just very negative on this issue. Because
President Harry Truman was the one who desegregated the armed forces. So before that, forces in New Hampshire and Massachusetts were desegregated. This Revolutionary War, Civil War, until World War II. The forces separate. or in the living quarters, mess?
Not in the Revolutionary War. They were not segregated, but by the time of the Civil War, they were.
And until Women's Act.
Yeah.
Pick up from here. And with that, the Amos Fortune Forum is now closed.